Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Zach Congonis. We are here to bring you the best solutions to your lifting problems. Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
Ready and
So, Will,
action.
when's the last time you blow a load before a comp? Give us a time frame.
Oh, jeez. What an intro. Jesus Christ.
This is a serious question.
Oh, man. Wow. People have switched on and gone like, I'm gonna load up Nexus Unloaded because it's a great educational podcast about powerlifting and I would love to better myself as a powerlifter. And then you just they've switched it off instantly. But just gone like, well, didn't realise it was this podcast.
The people need to know. I mean, it's a commonly asked question. Should you or should you not make whoopee during comp week?
Not exactly what you asked. I doubt anybody's like, going around asking each other that. I in that aggressive.
We have actually had someone in the gym.
Yeah,
Not
but
this
I'm sure
gym,
they asked it
in
in more
another
of a
gym.
like, hey.
Pardon me, William. Is there any point
Just
before
bam.
competition in which you would not ejaculate to conserve testosterone? Is that better? Is that...
Yes, much better, because that has no scientific backing and is completely false, and it will not do anything to your hormone levels, and you should just do whatever pleases you.
Wouldn't it
So
make
I
you
don't
more
know
frisky if you bottled it up? Like you're a bit more agitated, a bit more pent up, ready to
No.
fucking crush the weights?
There was actually a study.
Go back to our last episode on training arousal and deal and just play around, see what works for you.
There was actually a study done on
There's many studies done.
but on having sex the night before
There's lots of them, and they're all.
It's just a bunch of researchers
some
wanting
of
to
them say
watch it.
There's a surge. There's a surge in like happy hormones and testosterone as well.
Yeah,
So what I'm hearing is you should
It's gonna
you
make you
should
more
make
relaxed.
love the night before a competition. I mean, depending on, maybe put on your Apple Watch so you know, like, if it's the calorie burn's too high, you're going to be under your weight class or whatever it is. But so you're saying it's a good idea?
I'm not going to divulge our sexual affairs
I
on
didn't
the
ask you to.
podcast. Thank you.
But it's we kind of did, but I think the science is very inclusive, and see, the thing is, like, this is the problem with all science, right? Like, and what we say about like nutrition research, in that, like, say we want to do a nutrition research and see how much like growth people get on a certain diet and all that stuff. Like, me and you both know how hard it is to get somebody to follow like a fucking meal plan or to follow a training protocol for 1 week, and they are literally paying us to do
Yes.
that. Imagine being a scientist and trying to get, tens, if not, many more people
At least 10.
to follow this plan so that you can study the results of it. It's just not happening, and that's and I'm not saying that all science is stupid because of that, but it's definitely a consideration you have to make, is that people don't always follow protocols, and they lie about things. So I don't trust things like that, and I don't think it. And there's so many other way more important factors that come into performance on a comp day that I highly doubt that is a one-for-one, a connection
If
between.
it's going to make you sleep a little bit better or whatever, then
Whatever. Do that on a normal night. Whatever. See, it's not a comp-related thing. It's just a general do what the fuck you like. Do what makes you happy is the answer to this. But yes, I think that ends that. That was
So,
very straight to the point, but I hope they
for
keep
a
at
brief
least some
synopsis,
value out
if
of
you
it.
want to, you can do it, and you won't lose any testosterone if you do.
Do what you want
Exactly.
with your life,
It's a very...
and you'll be fine.
have sex.
Whatever. Have fun. Not
Sex
too
is
much
good.
fun. What else have we got? Ron?
I'm shooketh. I'm
It's your birthday.
It is.
when this podcast airs.
It's not my birthday today. It'll be my birthday when this podcast comes out. We have discussed this, Mickey. Stop trying to fucking Back to the Futurist with the podcast, trying to act like we're in the future.
The date this podcast is released, on the 30th of September. How old are you turning, Will?
Old. 33. So
Getting on in
on.
years. At what point does you falling over become a fall
really.
instead of you falling over? You're not at that point at 33.
Oh God, no, much
At
older.
least 40.
Yeah, no, I'm sweet. What do you fuck? Jesus, I'll still smash her until I can until I can't bash you anymore. It's like a dad talking to his child.
I'll
It's
beat
like,
the
"I'll
shit out of
fucking
you."
show son. Then one day the child grows up.
Jesus.
Yeah, but
Until what? Until like Zach can out total you, then
yeah, until Zach.
I mean,
beats
what?
me
How many?
total.
I've got how
I'm
many?
not old.
You're more than. You're 9 years older than me. So what? When you retire, I'll have a very brief period. I could beat the shit out of you.
are we gonna sing Happy Birthday?
You have to
I mean,
try
you
it.
can if you want
No,
to.
You don't sing happy. No,
In the same
We
tone
don't
that you
need
did
to.
last time.
If the people are in their car, they can. Don't. Don't.
It's so
start this. It's way
breathy.
too long.
It's my my Marilyn Monroe.
No, it's your Mr.
I think it's just because their microphones were so bad or something.
Mr. William. Okay.
But yes, I am 33, but I'll still bash Zach any day.
Jesus fucking Christ. It's fair.
Well, you asked for a metric. There's your metric.
When I can't
right?
beat the shit out of you.
Yeah. I
And
think
you know what Will's beating the shit out of you looks like? It's just holding you to the ground and sitting on you because
I am still large.
my
I am
number
still
one
larger
strategy
than
fights.
Will. Can we all appreciate that? I am a larger human. So if we go in sitting contest,
in what perspective?
general
In just
size.
your height.
yeah,
114. Oh no!
Gotcha.
I'm gonna have to get the
Gotcha.
Oreos.
Only one. I was
Oh, that's bullshit.
15.1 this morning or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Gotcha. Dieting down. I'm actually down a
I've
kilo
gotta-
from
I've
last
gotta eat
week.
up.
So
So just for a brief recap, we've gone from beating meat to beating Zach, and then I think the next topic is
and on to
the next beating
beating.
of competition PRs. Not almost. I mean, to get to the question.
In
I
a
mean,
way.
we've kind of got a two for one question. We had the question from let me pull up this absolute legend's name because I've already forgotten it. From Paul Atkinson, asking, "Love you, homie.
Love
Thank
you,
you
Paul.
for going to the Nexus Performance website and submitting a podcast submission. That's very, very helpful for us." The question that good old Paulie had for us was: are there any recovery modalities like ice baths / heat / rub and tug? Didn't say rub and tug, but massage. You lean towards to recover, aid with pain, especially leading up to a comp. So essentially just asking, are there any extracurricular recovery modalities, hence asking about the coitus, that can help leading into competition? And because that would be a very short discussion, we have tweaked it to add some padding to the episode. So today, we'll go through how do you get the most out of your peak week before comp. Even though I've never called it a peak week before. That sounds all bodybuildery and tanny.
Well, I think you had deload week written there, and I changed it because I don't like to think of it as a deload week. It's like a recovery week or
It's
a
a
taper. I don't know, but yeah, I call it peak week only because I like to. Because if I say taper, I don't know. Like people think taper and they think like lower performance. They're like, oh, I'm just doing less shit. It doesn't really matter that much. I'm just tapering. Whereas when I say peak week, I'm referring to it in all facets of improving performance. I'm like, hey, yeah, we're lowering volume and doing the taper stuff that was to improve recovery and blah blah blah. But also from a mental aspect, like we're trying to up confidence, feel really good during this peaking process, and just do all of the things which is going to make somebody perform better on their competition day. So I use peak week because it's like, I could call it tapering,
How about
but it's just
week,
I don't know, just
week of
a slightly
performance maximization? It's got a nice ring to it.
That's
little
a
too
mouthful.
long. Doesn't flow off the tongue. If
The
you want to put
point
that
is
into somebody's
made.
plan, but yes, the point
It's
is
a
made.
PMW. Performance
and-
maximization week.
We could use that. Put it in the program. Sound really
Just
smart,
making up
be great.
terms.
But it isn't really helpful. It's like
I mean,
just using
that's
big
what
words.
strength coaching is now, isn't it? You just make up big words and you put them in spreadsheets.
In the Instagram world. It is.
That's how
Yeah.
it's meant to be.
I like to cover the peaky deloady part first. Like why shouldn't we just go all out and lift our maxes on training week just to make sure it's there for the day? Like why shouldn't we do that, and why should we actually taper or deload or peak or whatever we're going to assign.
I mean, for the most part, it's because fatigue is a real thing that exists, as opposed to what who made all the comments about overtraining? A fucking YouTuber. It wasn't CT Fletcher. Overtraining doesn't exist. Ages ago. If you overtrain, you're a pussy. It's fully escaped me.
Maybe our favorite, like, influencer of the
fair.
podcast.
Like one of those fellas going around saying 100% the best that overtraining doesn't exist and fatigue isn't real. I can most certainly say fatigue is real, and the important part about the performance maximization week is helping you pull back that fatigue to allow you to express your maxes, because fatigue does have an impact in your ability to express your current strength. The more fucked up you are, the less strong you are. At least the less strong you're able to exhibit.
Yeah, we've talked about fatigue a bit, and so we're not going to go big into it, but it's one of those things where we think we're tough and we can just go like, nah, it's all right, just keep pushing through. But the stronger you get and the more experienced you get, you learn that it's certainly something that's better off being caught early and dealt with and managed in an appropriate way before it becomes a problem, because when it becomes a problem, it's often a little bit too late or whatever, like it's something that we'll consider. And then that comes into the coaching process as well. Like, I have some people, like Anthony, that like to overshoot their RPEs, but also a similar mindset that is associated with overshooting the RPEs is just being a bit of a toughie and just pushing to the limits. It's like, I feel a little bit fucked today, but guess what? I'm just going to like deal with it. And then that's okay for one session, because shit sessions do happen. But when it becomes weeks upon weeks of just like dealing with it and just pushing through and being, hardcore about it, it certainly may be something worth paying attention to. And then as a coach, if people aren't telling you things, we can't deal with things. So there are people like that, and I've got people at the opposite end of the spectrum whenever they have like a slightly, they only get their 7 hours of sleep as opposed to 8 hours of sleep, and they complain that, the world's going to end. So like, both of those people aren't wrong and completely fine. It's just how they are and how they feel it. And as a coach, I'm always like looking for signs of that, so I know like I'm going to deload this person a little bit more proactively, because the reactive way just isn't working because they're not telling me. And then the other person, when they start whinging, I'm like, I still got 2-3 more weeks on me. So
their arms hanging off, they're bleeding out their eyes. Like, no, coach, pull me back in. I've got it. We're fine.
Well, those people I'll pay a lot more attention to the performance metrics to gather fatigue, as opposed to like what they're saying. Whereas the other people, I'll just slightly altering my perception of like how I'm going to measure fatigue for the people, really. But yeah, coming into a comp, the last thing that you want is fatigue being up high and limiting performance, because powerlifting is a sport where you have to get your lifts on the day. You can't go out to the ref at a comp and go like, look, I know I just
check
missed
my
that
IG
280, but trust me, I did 300 in the gym a couple of weeks ago, bro. And he'll go like, oh, actually, yeah, you are a lot stronger. And then, we'll just update that. And it doesn't work like that. I almost want to say, I was about to say I wish it did, but I do not wish it is, because it actually benefits me, because I feel like it's a skill and you get better at it, and it's part of powerlifting. It's like it's part of what makes a good powerlifter is being able to manage fatigue leading up to it and being able to deal with performance on the day and do the best on the day. It's part of the sport. So yeah, it's just that deload week, that taper week. It usually isn't just that 1 week either. It's usually multiple weeks. 3 as a very, very general rule of thumb, leading up, that we're slowly tapering down volume as the main metric to allow for more recovery and more performance. Now, we've talked about this, so I won't keep going on and on, but that essentially is the goal of the peak week, or the final taper week, as well as the mental aspect.
It's an important thing to mention that by the time you get to the week of the comp, where you're having that either peak week or the deload week or whatever you're going to call it, the majority of the dropping of fatigue has already happened. Like, there's not, if you just redline it up until the week before comp, there's not a single thing you can do in that week to dissipate all the fatigue to ever exist. And that's not the goal either way. The idea is to generally have it decrease as you go through, because there's always going to be some element of fatigue. And depending on the type of the person, depending on how practiced they need to feel. I know a lot of people get the willies if they don't do something heavy the week before comp and they start stressing out like they're going to fucking forget how to bench press in the week of. And it's a...
I'm glad you explained that, because I was about to say, like, I don't think a lot of people understand what the willies are.
What do you mean? Get the willies?
Yeah, we got...
It's when you text them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get it? Willies? Nah, okay, that's right. But yeah, people will freak out. And I think it's an important thing to mention that.
Yes.
I reckon I'm going to cop it for this, but powerlifting is not as skill based as certain tasks can be. Like, there's certain things on a spectrum of how often you need to practice it to be really good and crisp at it. Powerlifting is not at the top of that list by no means. Like, if you have somebody who's, I don't know, competition shooting, and they're shooting teeny tiny targets, they're probably competition shooting the day before the competition, because there's less fatigue demands and there's probably a higher skill demand. Whereas with powerlifting, you don't forget how to squat in a week. It's always 100%. There, regardless of how often. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason why we only train 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe if you're really up there. But you know, there's a reason why there's like a volume limit to this stuff, and because there's a fatigue trade-off associated with the amount of work that you're doing, and it isn't infinite. You just can't keep just doing more work and just spending 12 hours. Whereas if you're a professional video game person and that is your sport, those guys probably play games for 12 hours a day because there's no like physical demand for it. It's more like brain power, and it's more like
besides carpal tunnel,
the fingers and
the silent killer.
And the, you know. Yeah, but it's a thing that they can do. Or like you said, some of those other sports where it's like the difference between kicking a ball straight and kicking it slightly off in an angle and shanking it is literally like a really small difference in reality. Whereas in powerlifting, sure, there's the skill of like bracing or whatever, but like once you've got your head around it, like I know we've said it in earlier podcasts, but like truly just being jacked and having a lot of muscle that is able to produce a huge amount of force is a lot of the sport. And then the technical demand, I feel like is still absolutely a real thing, and you only have to like look at a person that's, you know, on their first day of squatting and then look at them a couple of years later squatting to see that. But there is an efficiency aspect, but it's not near as high.
The engine plays the biggest role.
They like to make out
like people you see show up to a gym and just absolutely like, look, I'm not the strongest person to ever exist, but when I walk into a gym and there's an 18-year-old who's never trained before who walks in and destroys all my numbers their first day training, some people just have a better engine. It happens.
Man, I've trained a couple of like, you know, genetic anomalies. I trained one guy who, and this was back in the day when I actually did in-person training before Nexus, and I remember he's just a naturally kind of built dude. And then I walked up and we were going through squats, barbell squats. Had hardly squatted before. I think he played a sport or something like that and had a little bit of a background in it. But he rocks up, and we ended up working up to 180, which is pretty impressive full stop, right? Like,
it's not a bad squat.
For a dude who hasn't been in the gym a huge amount of time. I think he was a teenager. I was like, damn, that's impressive. But then he actually did it, and he came up. Not only like did his heels like slightly leave the ground, he came up onto the balls of his feet, like onto his toes, in the bottom, and got to like, you know, arse to ankle, and then proceeded to squat it like that on his toes, like into the bottom, and then obviously like rocked back down as he got like back halfway back up.
What the fuck
was
just happened?
Like, yeah, wow. Like, holy shit. Like, if you could do 180 like that, like, if we learned to squat, like, even a little bit, like, holy fuck. Yeah, I've had a few people like that. If you go to your local World's Gym where you can see the brosifs, they're just who only do, like, one set of bench a week, and they only do it to impress their mates or whatever, but they've got a lot of muscle because they're pretty much bodybuilders. It's not uncommon to see, like, a 180 200 bench every now and then from just like some huge massive jack dude whose technique you would say is not the best. You know, he's not having a big high arch. He wouldn't be holding a lot of upper back tightness, holding a lot of leg drive, doing all the things which we like to outline as what a, you know, quote unquote good bench press should look like. But they just kind of like just drop the bar on themselves and then throw it off them. And you're like
this dude
sick.
gets it.
Like, you know what I mean? So there is a skill aspect. I don't want to say powerlifting isn't skillful, but it's definitely dependent on like just fucking general muscle size and how much muscle you have on a body heavily as well. And that's why we at Nexus kind of are focused on the hypertrophy aspect a lot of the time with a lot of people. I just think most people need to get a little bit more jacked and good things happen. But to go back to the recovery modalities, this is where, we've kind of outlined in that deload week leading up to a comp, that by the time you get there, you started to taper volume. So your volume, your workload is going down. So that instantly is going to have a trade-off, hopefully, of like recovery going up and performance kind of trending up with it. Your ability to express that, the load on the bar going up. So there's a recovery aspect in itself right there. That's a big part of this equation. It's just smart programming. Then we have the other ones, which we've talked about recovery in other podcasts with in the big rocks there being sleep and nutrition. So like in these final weeks, really good idea to be getting good sleep. You know, as hard as it is sometimes, like the night before a comp or whatever, like I don't know about you, but I'll get
Don't sleep at all.
And you'll start to like go like, you just get excited and you're just sitting there like, you know, like just staring at the roof going like, I can't
lift some weights.
And then, you know, Mickey will tell you stories of like when I've been in my soft suit at like 4 a.m. just doing stretches. So like I get excited about it. A little easier to control these days, but still there. But do your best to get good sleep throughout the week. If you have to travel and things like that, it's worth paying for rooms that have half decent beds or like an environment, cooking facilities, things like that are going to lead to better recovery, better eating, better sleeping. And then, with the nutrition side of things, probably if you can avoid it, not diet into a comp. It's going to limit recovery there. So like not being in a deficit, having at least a maintenance amount of calories, a neutral calories, or a little bit of a surplus that's going to allow you to recover better leading into a comp is going to do a hell of a lot. There are, obviously like weight classes in powerlifting, and sometimes you have to do what you need to do to make those weight classes. But if you can avoid that, highly recommend it because, again, one of the big recovery aspects that we're talking. So when we talk recovery, sleep, nutrition, smart programming, they're like 99% of your equation. Then there comes this actual question from Paul, which is the recovery modality. So like, as long as you understand at the start of this conversation that you're talking about the peak of the pyramid, you're talking about the 1%ers, you're talking about the little things. Now, usually I don't recommend them at all. Because, like, other than massage or whatever, but it's not massage from a pure recovery aspect. It's like trying to move better or whatever. But from a pure recovery aspect, whether it's a cryo or an ice bath or a sauna, or if you're just looking at it purely for recovery, usually I don't really bother with it because it's just not really needed. Like we can manage fatigue much easier through those 99% of the big rocks that we talk about, and it's kind of like, It's probably not going to make a big difference to the overall outcome of this. It's going to be those things that have a much, 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 much larger outcome. But in the peak week and the final week before comp, kind of can see a slight place for it. Can see a little bit more of an argument. Like somebody would be able to convince me a lot more about those things during that week than any other week. I don't know. What about yourself? Like, I know at Pro Raw you have like the little cryo and stuff like that. Like,
to come at it from the position of devil's advocate, if you haven't really done that thing or used that modality at all the entire prep, and you just throw this random thing in the week leading up to it, when is it ever a good idea to be trying something new the week of? It's like saying, I'm going to try this new Indian place the night before my competition.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to get the most out of some of those modalities, doing them frequently before the competition and making them a part of your routine, because for the most part they're just routine-based things. If it gives you time to relax, or it gives you time to devote to yourself, or all these bits and pieces. Same thing with massage, like the whole compassionate touch thing. It's just a bit of down regulation. Those tools are most likely better used throughout a longer duration. Like if you really like going into a sauna and you get 20 minutes to yourself to just turn off and relax, that's probably where the benefit's going to come from. If you're just jamming it in the week before comp, it could even, I mean, a lot of those modalities add stress to the system. Like jumping in a cold plunge adds stress to the system. Getting really hot adds stress. Getting massage, depending on who's doing it, may add stress.
In a way, yeah. I mean, if you find it enjoyable, if it relaxes you. But yeah, I find often like people leave a crazy, stupid life where they're just really stressed out, whether it's from work or whatever, and they just, they're always on the clock, looking at their phone, looking at what's the next schedule, and then they think that just jamming more into their schedule is a good idea. Sometimes it isn't. It can just make you more stressed because then you're just laying on the table thinking about like how much work you have to do when you get off it. But yeah, for most people, it's just a good chance to relax, and just that relaxing and just kind of zoning out and is probably doing a lot of the work for you. So do we see, what are we going with here? Like, do we see any of them being like overly backed up or useful?
Hot and cold exposure, hot and cold exposure definitely has some benefits. Literature-wise, it can, they have some benefits. In terms of their benefit towards you competing, probably negligible with one exposure the day before competition. I wouldn't think that it's going to make or break. And on that same token, like if you had a single drink of alcohol in the last 5 weeks of prep, you're probably going to focus on not doing that instead of trying to add sauna. If you're getting 7 hours sleep, you're going to focus on fixing that besides getting in Normatec boots. If you're not eating enough, maybe focus on that before you get into sauna. Like there's all these bits and pieces that you're either going to be better off taking things away, like taking away going out at 6 weeks out, or taking away eating 4 pizzas 3 weeks out from comp and giving yourself the shits.
Yeah. The thing people are going to... I mean, I think the reason why these questions come up and why people like this is considered, because if you watch like the Australian Open, the tennis, where you'll see the players go off the court and then go and jump in an ice bath or whatever after their game, and the commentators make a big deal about it or whatever, and talk about recovery and blah blah blah. But so I think that's where these questions come from. But you have to remember that those athletes, like especially during those tournaments, they're playing like usually every other day. And they're doing a sport where they're running backwards and forwards at full pace on a hard court, and
in the sun,
and for multiple hours straight. So it's a lot of beating up on the system. Whereas for us in powerlifting, like doing an hour 3, 4, 5 times a week in the gym in a very controlled manner, that we have the ability to modulate that amount of workload as well. Like we can push it up or down depending on how you recover. In a tennis match or whatever, you don't have that control. You can't just go like, I'm going to play heaps better on this one, so the game's shorter. They usually whatever. It's not your choice. But like their demands on their body during that acute period is way higher than ours, and they need to bounce back to 100%.
Yeah,
like that, like way quicker. Where they're trying to just drop inflammation in whatever way possible and kind of get back to where they need to be. Whereas for us as powerlifters, like we peak for a competition, a couple of times a year we recommend, and then we have like I said before, like a really general rule of thumb, like a 3-week taper leading up to that we can modify along the way and make sure that we're good for that day. You know what I mean? Like they're very different things that we're talking about.
If you're coming in to those last couple of weeks and you're still beat to shit, it was more so a mismanagement of time and volume previously, as opposed to you didn't do enough things in the deload week. If you were competing one weekend and then doing a second comp the weekend directly after, okay, maybe get in an ice bath. Like it's probably a little bit more relevant then. However, we're not as much dealing with acute fatigue from a single instance. It's an accumulation or a build-up of fatigue from weeks and weeks, which, as Will said, we have the opportunity and the means to manage well before. The date doesn't change. It's not even like strongman, where the dude's like, we're going to tell you the events the day before you go. It's not like the meet directors out there changing dates, like, nah, it's going to be Thursday. Ha, fuck you, it's Sunday now. Like, it's very, very predictable.
No, if you enter... and if you enter, if in the future a powerlifting competition goes up where you have to do maxes every day across a week,
it's called CrossFit.
You know, our answer might change on this. Our answer might change on this, so we'll go back to it. Yeah, and like I said, in other sports like that where it's just repeated bout and they're just like smashing themselves daily and they have to be ready for the next day or in 2 days, like even like footy where they're playing a game every weekend. I see a little bit more, you know, there's validity there. But for us, where we're competing literally twice a week and very, very controllable, very manageable, we can change workloads as we please. I really don't think, there's a need for it most of the time. But Paul, outside of a competition, because I know you didn't directly ask that about competition, I know you directed this as a bit more of a general question. The answer's still the same for me. I just still think it's not needed. I think you'll get way more out of just focusing on how you can improve sleep, nutrition, stress management, and, you know, make your life a little bit better around your training or your sessions a little bit more efficient.
I mean, unless you're an adult with disposable income and you really enjoy
all this
it.
other stuff.
In that case, fucking go for broke. Like, I love saunas. I love getting moist in a wooden room.
Absolutely not
It's fucking hurt. Good fun. You feel great when you finish, but is it integral to performance? No. I love cold plunges. I love getting all shivery. Brr. It's brr. Cold go brr. But yeah, like if you really enjoy it
effects.
And it's within your means to do, it might have some small benefit, but no benefit that'll outweigh any of the bigger rocks in any stretch of the imagination. Like, you can't cold plunge your way out of terrible sleep.
This is probably the situation I see the most regularly, is like the person who has absolutely not managed their stress, absolutely not managed their nutrition, and definitely not managed their sleep. And then last week they shoot
me a message and
be like, man, I'm fucked, bro. Like, what, you know, do you reckon if I just go, like, take jump in the sauna or get a massage, like, I'll be fixed? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely, yeah. That'll solve all your problems. Definitely take away all the crappy sleep and crappy food and crappy stress management and crappy management of your life in general for the last 12 weeks leading up to this point. Definitely.
Go get a massage. Go get a rub down from Steve-O and his magic hands.
It's you can't use it as a crutch. You can't use it as everything else is crappy in my load and fatigue management, so I'm just going to use this to bolster up my recovery and just lean on these crutches. Get a massage each week whilst everything else is crap. If your nutrition is terrible and you are spending hundreds of dollars on going to see the physio every week to massage you, take one of those sessions away, spend it on a nutrition coach. And get your nutrition a bit more online, I guarantee the effects on your recovery are going to be a million times better. We did have a couple more things to go through on in regard to peak week and stuff in general here that we wanted to go through. So other considerations such as we already mentioned a couple of them, but like travel and lifestyle and body weight and stuff leading into a competition.
I mean, I think the travel one would be a good one to focus on, purely because now comps are ramping back up and comps are offering more cashola. I saw $200 being given away at a local meet. I almost choked. I was like, what? You get paid to do this? And I was like, I've never earned a cent. But people are probably going to be traveling more now because there's more opportunities, there's more things to do, and most of the time people travel fucking horrendously for competitions, especially if you haven't traveled for them before. It can be a little bit of a shock, just in terms of, hey, you're sleeping in a different bed, you've eaten 4 airport cheese toasties, and now you don't know what to do because you're 2 kilos over. There's a lot of things to consider.
Well, yeah. The first thing is just most people's issues come down to their planning prior. It's they book a hotel last minute. They don't check if it has cooking facilities, so that when they get there, they're like, oh, crap, my stuff doesn't have cooking facilities. Oh, guess that means I'm eating pizza for the whole time here. You know, like
Smiles
stuff
and
like
Anthony.
that. Just not checking, not checking how close it is
Anthony's
to the
a good boy. He doesn't do that.
checking how close it is to the event, so you're not driving, you know, a couple of hours to get to the location away in, and then a couple of hours back, and then a couple of hours back in the next day to compete or whatever. Like just stuff like that. Like simple planning goes a hell of a long way here. I've done comps all around the country, and it's literally that most of the time.
Give yourself a window of time to get to the location.
Yeah, flying in
settle
3 hours before you have to start lifting.
Or even the day before. Like, fly in, like, if you can afford to do it, your comp's on a Saturday, fly in on Thursday. Because there's been a lot of flight cancellations for people as well lately. Like, there's
too
Fucking
many.
Jetstar.
Yeah.
Yeah, take a couple of days off work before it. It would not only help your recovery, like we've just talked about, and your stress management, and not having to worry about work so much, but it'll also, negate some of the potential stress of when you get there and settling into your new location and everything as well.
Even just doing your best to keep routines
so
similar.
that's-
Like if you always go for a walk first thing in the morning, maybe do that once you've traveled. If you go to bed at a certain time, try to do that. Trying to keep things as consistent as you can during those periods can help a shitload. I remember the first competition that I traveled for, went down to good old Frenger. I think I was like 18 and did junior nationals at PTC HQ. I just packed my shit, got a beautiful room at the Quest in Frankston, and had pizza the night before, had a terrible competition day, and just, I flew in the day before. It was fucking awful. And I think that most people, once you make that mistake once, you're like, okay, you can't do it as much on the cheap as you'd like to. You got to spend a little bit more money to make sure you have the facilities and make sure you have the opportunity to put up the best performance. And if you want to do it on a shoestring budget, understand that there may be some performance detriments that come of that.
Yeah, but honestly, like we compete, like I said, like we recommend twice a year is a pretty good. We recommend 3 is kind of the max. 1 or 2 is probably a pretty good idea, and yeah, it's literally twice a year. Like prepping for 3 to 6 months for something, and then coming in and just flopping on the day because of something simple like that. When you're putting so much time and effort and sacrifice into getting into that, you know, well-prepared state for the competition in the first place, just seems like it's worth spending a little bit of money on and a little bit of your time preparing for.
Or just compete locally.
I think it's also important to mention that's exactly what I was going to say, what level of competition it is. Like, if you're someone like Will or Anthony or
Zach.
Keita or some of these super high-level athletes, Zach,
national champion.
Dylan Hellriegel flew over from Perth for Breakthrough a couple of weeks ago. So, like, unless you're a really high-level athlete going to those high-level competitions, nationals events and things like that, then stick to your local comps. It alleviates the pressure of having to travel. And if you know, like, let's just say you're going to GPC Nationals is in Perth, you know that you do have to fly for a nationals event one year, then perhaps try and do an interstate regional comp so you get used to what traveling and competing may feel like, if that's a big concern for you. If not, then just stick to your local meets.
Yeah, and to go into the planning stuff a little bit further, we talk about equipment that might be needed. Like, this again is just planning, really, but like all the things that you need for your competition day, with backups to those things, I would consider having prepared
Specifically spare undies.
So have your belt, have your soft suit, have your spare undies, have your spare socks, have your everything. Go through the checklist of everything you need, all your lifting equipment that you need for squat, bench, and deadlift, plus your soft suit, preferably a backup soft suit
in case
too.
you tear us.
Socks, spare socks, undies, spare undies, all that stuff.
A t-shirt.
Spare t-shirts, all of it. Like have it ready to go, and have, prepare for any occasion, because whatever can go wrong will go wrong at some point when you
to stress that as well. This is why we included that little topic in peak week, because getting all your equipment is not night before, it's week before. You don't wait till the night before you comp and then try and find whatever Rebel Sports open to find those footy socks, because we all know we've done that before. Specifically me. But getting shit organised and understanding.
That's underwear, mate. You
That's
do
okay.
underwear.
Yeah, there was
on
socks
the
and
day.
then there was
So that
also
was an
underwear for you.
extenuating
You
circumstance.
and
I
Remy.
actually still have those undies that Brendan gave me. I was convinced the dickies that I had. I can go get them if you want, but they're framed in my cupboard. But yeah, just reading the rule book, making sure you have all the bits and pieces to minimize the stress in the days leading up to it is going to do wonders for your ability to focus on the task at hand and to actually recover. Going to do way more than trying to fill your schedule with just more stuff to do.
Even though you just try to make an excuse and say that the undies thing
It was not
your fault.
He totally bypassed that comment, didn't he?
A good rule of thumb here is like check the rule book and see like what if there are rules around what underwear you should wear and how long should my socks be and what soft suits are acceptable and what belts are
To defend myself,
That should be
the
done
rulebook
in
said
the.
jocks, not your testicle has to be out the left-hand side of them. All right? So I'll take some blame.
Yourself and Remy both messed
Well, I
that
thought
up.
you could wear
massively-
like briefs, but they had to be full like dickies. They're full G-string, tidy whities.
Tidy whities.
Exactly, they
Tidy
could have said
whities.
that.
Yeah, and you got what size? Boys
Yeah,
size
it didn't
10?
fit into it. Sadly, I mean the penis was small enough, but the quads were too big for the leg holes.
Surely there was like if the rule book says just jocks, I'm sure it'd be fine. So I don't know if I believe you too much in that because clearly they're going off the rule book here, and if they think that your briefs aren't correct, and then there has to be like the wording to back that up. I doubt I doubt the equipment checker is just being hard on you and being like, no,
fuck this guy.
Your undies are no good here, sir. So I blame that entirely on you. But yeah, let's. I think that's a good place to end this up, Paul. I hope that answers your question. Keep it up with the feedback, with the comments, with the questions. Only positive, and
Only positive.
And we'll keep answering them. Yeah, only positive, no negative. But yeah, we'll keep answering them. I love doing these ones. We know that when we do this podcast and we do one like this that's actually somebody's written in specifically for, even though like all the ones that we do them specifically for, but we just take it from client problems that we've had. When somebody writes in and we know they're listening and they know they're going to get something out of it.
Feels good helping people.
It's good stuffs.
Gives you the warm fuzzies.
That's what we're all about. That and making stupid jokes. Cool. End of there.
Red hot.
Catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to Nexus Unloaded. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned on today's podcast, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gym services. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at NexusPerformance.Aus for any updates on what we are currently doing. See you all in the next episode.